On September 7th, we're going to have a lunar eclipse in Pisces, and this is the first of two eclipses this September, the second being a solar eclipse in Virgo, which will take place on September 21st. Now, my friends, we have already talked extensively about these two eclipses in my most recent video, the September forecast, which I hope you watched if you're a longtime viewer. But if you are new to the channel, I highly suggest you go check out the forecast when this video is concluded, because there's a lot of things I said in that video that I may or may not touch on in this one. Now, today, this is the exclusive lunar eclipse video, of course, so we're going to dive deep into the role that this eclipse will play in your life and some of the things I feel that are necessary to contemplate involving one very, very big part of this eclipse cycle, which is Saturn. Every astrologer that I know, every astrologer that I come across, that I at least watch on YouTube or wherever I consume astrology content, primarily here on YouTube, Saturn is a force of conversation, and some people talk about it like it's not going to be a big deal. Some people are talking about it like it is the worst thing since a nuclear holocaust. And I think there is truth in the middle, of course, because you just never know what a malefic is going to do in your life. But one thing that we know Saturn is known for is commitment, structure, discipline, and things that stand the test of time. Saturn is father time, if you will. Saturn is patience, maturity. Wherever Saturn is in your birth chart, I would argue is a place that has taken you a long time to kind of get the memo on something. It is a place where we are most destined to mature in the biggest of ways. For example, if you had Saturn in your second house, you might take a long time throughout the course of your life to maybe find some self-worth and personal values. It might take you a long time to mature in a way that you handle your material resources or your finances. So over time, Saturn provides us the wisdom and the maturity and the discipline in order to become more masterful at something, which is why when Saturn restricts us or blocks us, typically there is a massive lesson there. There is something we need to work through. Every time Saturn transits a zodiac sign, to me, I look at it as a cosmic wrecking ball that needs us to build a new foundation from the ground up. Think about when you build a house, you need to start with a foundation. Saturn will enter a zodiac sign and pretty much cause some challenges and really maybe bring to the surface some things that do need to be restructured, things that do need to be re-examined, things that need to be put under the microscope so we can recommit to something, or get rid of things so we can start committing to something else. Saturn innately is a colder energy because that coldness needs us to see things more clearly. Okay, Saturn is very sobering, and I think that word sober is actually going to be very relevant for this eclipse, okay, because we're dealing with Pisces, which is the opposite of sober. Pisces is infinite, boundless, creative potential. Pisces also brings illusion and confusion, okay, so Pisces can be the most mystical, spiritual, artistic, empathic, sensitive force, which has beautiful characteristics in any Pisces life. Of course, you probably know Pisces suns, risings, or moons. You may even be one of them out there. But at the same time, there is a very powerful force of illusion, confusion, engaging what's real and what's not real. And Saturn in Pisces, I think, for all of us, definitely brought this sense of sobering, concrete reality. And throughout its 3-year transit there, I feel we were all given an opportunity to structure maybe some of the illusions of that part of our life, or to really kind of reorganize and to recommit to something, or to commit to something in that Pisces part of your life. Now, during this eclipse moment, this lunar eclipse. We're only 6 days into a freshly re-ingressed Saturn at 29 degrees, the anaretic degree. And like we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, because the solar eclipse that will be happening September 21st, that's falling at 29 degrees Virgo. Again, the anaretic degree energy, the last degree energy, is very potent for these eclipse cycles. And what does this represent? Well, the last degree of the zodiac, any zodiac sign, does represent endings, culmination. The ending of the degree, the last degree of a zodiac sign, is really kind of the wrapping up of karma of all of the degrees it passed through until it got to that 29th degree. Now, Saturn being at the anaretic degree of Pisces, while we have this lunar eclipse, the moon falling at 15 degrees in the second decan, ruled by Jupiter, and we'll get to the tarot card correspondence a little bit later in the video. This is very significant because lunar eclipses by nature naturally bring a revelation that do kind of trigger endings. Okay, and that's something also that eclipses generally are all about as well. Big endings and big beginnings. But lunar eclipses are essentially very, very powerful, unstable, sometimes, full moons. Okay, and that's something that we have to keep in mind, that the revelation and the endings are more in alignment, in my opinion, with the lunar eclipses versus the solar eclipses. Solar eclipses, which are what, guys? Massive, powerful new moons, which are all about seedings, intention setting, and very much new beginnings. So for me, lunar eclipses are very much about the culmination and the ending. Now we have Saturn there, which is definitely going to bring to a conclusion something. I think it's going to be a cosmic reckoning of some kind. And I think when it comes to the Pisces energy here, this is a reminder of boundaries, endings, and karmic reckonings, like I just said. But I think this is kind of the unfinished business eclipse. Okay, so because we're dealing with this lunation, this illumination in the Pisces part of our life. Now, the solar eclipse coming at the end of the month, that will be going directly opposite Saturn. So I said in my forecast, my September forecast, that I actually think that the solar eclipse in Virgo is going to be more powerful because of such a direct, tightly aspected opposition. But by that point, Saturn will not be at the anaretic degree. It will be at 28 degrees Pisces, but still very significant to the Pisces stories in our life. And furthering my claim that we are very much in a cycle, an eclipse season, where we are dealing with breaking free of the illusions and breaking free of anything that was once held captive in a illusory sense. So I think Saturn coming back into Pisces in itself is kind of a reminder for us to re-examine and maybe reacquaint ourselves and to reflect and to meditate upon anything that the Saturn in Pisces story was all about for us. You know, like I know for me, the fifth house is Pisces. And for me, that's always been a place where my creative energy and artistic and creative forces have always been very active. And while Saturn was in Pisces all of those years, I very much was getting heavily into content creation and very heavily into starting YouTube work, if you will. And it's literally taken the entire time that Saturn has been in that part of my life for me to eventually get to a place where I have so many beautiful people who actually find my voice and my knowledge and my commentary worthy. So in a way, 3 years ago, I knew in my heart, wow, I really need to learn how to get more disciplined and better at doing YouTube, for example. And here we are, 3.5, almost 4 years later, and I am now speaking to thousands of you fine folks. So for me, what is this retrograde going to be all about? What is this eclipse moment going to be all about? You know, I'm still meditating into it, to be quite honest with you, because sometimes these eclipses are so unpredictable and unstable. We just don't know what this ending and beginning energy is going to be all about. I mean, part of me can say, all right, well, I've hit a very powerful milestone in content creation, so who knows what is to come next. But again, it's this sense, this overwhelming feeling for you as well, that we are closing an old story and we are birthing a new one. And eclipses must be handled with care, because we just don't know what these endings and beginnings really are going to be all about, except that we can use eclipses for releasing. And I think that is something very important to also note involving astrological magic. And towards the end of this video, I'll talk a little bit about astrological magic and how these eclipses possibly can be used as something we can work with. And again, I think eclipses and astrological magic are very much not for talisman making, but more for meditations and reflections and releasing type of rituals, which can be unique for all of us. But I want to continue talking about Saturn, guys, because I feel we need to understand the sobriety that Saturn is trying to still bring us in the Pisces part of our life. And I think, again, because it's in a retrograde motion, we really just have to understand this is probably going to be the sobering review and reflection on some things that might resurface, or things might enter your life that really require a deeper analysis, a deeper recognition of things we need to be committed to. Or if, for example, if Pisces is the 7th house in your birth chart, this could be a reflection on your commitment to some kind of relationship dynamic. So again, Saturn might enter your 7th house, and before you know it, you're having this eclipse moment. There's a big ending and a big beginning in the 7th house story for you. And it's all about your connection and your relationship to relationships. And how are you committing to a new relationship? How are you committing to this new sense of how you have structured some relationships? Even if it's just your relationship to relationships. I tell clients that all the time. That's how I word it. What is your relationship to relationships in the 7th house? Because I think a lot of us have a certain particular way that we deal with relationships. But again, Saturn, just as an example, reviewing, reflecting, refining, and maybe a little bit more restructuring in whatever Pisces is for you. And this eclipse moment is possibly highlighting something that just needs to be etched in stone forever and ever now. Now, Saturn as a liminal gatekeeper, this is something that I feel is very important to note for this eclipse, meaning that this is a great transition, okay? Because we are now entering the Aries era for Saturn, which is all about initiating and starting stuff. So Saturn really has just ended a 30-year cycle around the zodiac. So that's actually really important to note, even in a collective sense. Just think about that. Saturn is now being reborn into the first sign of the zodiac, Aries, and coming back into the karma of Pisces is very important. And I think we have to really acknowledge that there is a really serious dissolving energetically just around the globe and just in our lives. Even, yes, of course, hyper-focused to the Pisces part of your life, but just generally speaking, the Pisces energy is a dissolving. It is a reimagining. It is a redreaming. And Saturn, I think, wants to obviously ask us some deeper questions on what illusions must you leave at the door before you step into a new chapter. Okay, because symbolically, Saturn going into Aries is very much asking all of us to ignite some very powerful new chapters and to dream new things into being as well with Neptune's influence, okay? And Neptune will shortly be back in Pisces too. So this tag team Saturn-Neptune stuff is really important, guys, because this is really just the structuring of a new vision in a new dream in all of our lives. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction, whether it's at the tail end of Pisces or going back into Aries, very soon in the early winter, we are structuring something new into being when it comes to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But we need to understand, what illusions are we leaving at the door? Okay, what does Saturn want you to wake up to get real with once again? Because this eclipse, I feel, will be front and center in our face, involving a lot of that. Now, Saturn as an anchor and guide. Saturn doesn't just restrict, it solidifies what matters. So this is kind of maybe a more positive spin on what this eclipse moment could be about involving Saturn. We are not just dealing with matters of restriction. We could be dealing with matters that are asking us to solidify something. Like, what are we going to seal? I'm kind of getting a vision of, like, you know, this red stamp kind of sealing itself on the letter. You know, like one of those old fashioned letters where they used to take like the candle wax and just stick it, like, and it used to make it like all that red gooey stuff. Like, I feel Saturn is acting as something like that as well, where we're actually gaining access to a moment where we can really put a nail in a coffin. We could put that stamp on the letter, that oozy wax on the letter, and really seal something and really make it real and really make this conclusion a reality. Because I do think conclusions are of the essence here, this karmic reckoning of endings, but also this recognition that we are going to be birthing something very, very new and powerful here as well. So don't get it twisted. These eclipses in Pisces, or this eclipse in Pisces, is very much offering a renewal in a really big way. I just think what this eclipse is asking most dominantly is, okay, well, what do we need to get real with once again? What do we need to reflect on here to make something solidified? What do we need to solidify here? So this is really honest, getting honest with ourselves, getting honest with that part of our life, building a new foundation on the other side of endings. Okay, so this is also very much, I think, going to be part of this eclipse cycle, and very much part of the Saturn story, being this anchor and this guiding force during this big ending, big beginning. Now, I want to talk about the Decan, my friends, and I want to talk about the second Decan of Pisces. But before I do, I would just like to say, if you're enjoying this video and you would like to support the channel here and my work, I would love if you can consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video. All that stuff really helps the channel's growth, my friends. And yeah, that would just mean the world to me. Any engagement, comments can really help out my work here, expand my reach to other astrology lovers on YouTube, other mystics on YouTube. And yeah, and if anyone would like to book a reading with me as well, I do have some slots still open in September, and I will be closing a majority of my bookings for October as well. So please go check out some of my slots if you would like to meet me and if you would like for me to dive into your astrology. But yeah, my friends, I want to get right into some Decan work here. As you know, I work with the Decans and I work with the tarot card symbolism associated with Decans. And yeah, let's definitely start talking about that now. Okay, my friends, well, this eclipse is falling in the second Decan of Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter, and the tarot card associated with this Decan is the Nine of Cups. So again, this is kind of like a Jupiterian promise versus the Saturnian reality, or Saturnian reality, excuse me. Now, we have to understand the second Decan of Pisces is really about abundance. It is about expansion, blessings, joy, emotional fulfillment, and wish-granting energy, which is why I think the Golden Dawn Hermetic Order assigned the Nine of Cups to this Decan, because when we deal with that Pisces energy, we are dealing with a water sign. We're dealing with that emotional place, or one of the three emotional places of the zodiac. Pisces is extremely emotional. And I think when we deal with the second Decan here, we are dealing with an energy of abundance, an energy of overflowing of joy and opportunity even. But I feel when it comes to this particular eclipse, and because we're dealing with the reality of Saturn, this is actually kind of like a shattering of wishful thinking, a shattering of contentment, pleasure, satisfaction, abundance. I feel there's almost like an illusion of something, of all of those things that we kind of need to get sober to. So again, I'm not saying that we're all running around aloof here and think that everything is great and roses and cherries, because obviously we can look around at the world and see that there's a lot of things going on in the world that are very, very, very cataclysmic and scary, and also just very much in our face. And I would never say that we're living in an era of complete and utter abundance as far as happiness, bliss, and joy, especially with a lot of the political malarkey going on in the world. But I think we have to understand that this Decan, I think, promises abundance. It promises, wishful thinking, wishfulness, making wishes. I feel that this tarot card obviously is about pleasure and contentment and satisfaction. Okay. So we all know the imagery of the Nine of Cups when we talk about this man surrounded by the overflowing of cups, which means emotional fulfillment, sensual enjoyment. We are dealing with wishes fulfilled. Now, when we have a moon fall here, a full moon, or in this case, the eclipse, we are really hoping that some wishes are fulfilled. I think we're all sensing that there could be something in the Pisces part of my life that we want to find that deeper fulfillment in. Maybe some of us are having a little bit of illusions in a more positive sense. And I think some of those things must be examined a little bit closely. Like, is there something that you are deluded in and the reality is not what you're thinking? And I think there can be an energy of like, okay, well, is what I have here right now actually what I want? Okay. Is there anything that I am deluded in and that I need to have a little bit more reality checks in something? Is there anything I need to be a little bit more aware of that can provide a reality check to me? So again, I think when we look to this lunar eclipse, almost imagining this Nine of Cups reversed, I think can be helpful in us overcoming maybe some of what we might be faced with this lunar eclipse. So the shadow side, again, could be overindulgence and illusions of satisfaction. So that's why I was saying, like, hey, like, is there anything in Pisces right now that you think is satisfying, but in reality, there could be an essence of you fooling yourself? So really get clear with your blind spots, really get clear on what's been going on in the Pisces part of your life. Because again, these big endings, big beginnings with this eclipse, I think is going to want to shatter some of the illusions that may have been manifested over the last maybe half a year or so. So I think Saturn's intervention here is going to be sobering, and this is almost like stepping into a lavish party, but then somebody decides to come and become the party pooper. Like I'm just getting a vision of a bunch of like teenagers partying in a house, and then the parents come home and flick on the lights and everybody gets kicked out. So it's almost like the kids had this illusion that they were going to party all night and like hook up with each other, and the reality is that the parents came home early and oh my God, like I'm underage drinking, and oh my God, there's all this crazy stuff, and all the kids freak out and they're like, oh my God, I thought I was an adult, blah, blah, blah. So if you can imagine like an energy of that, and I feel that might have been a really bad analogy, but I think you guys get the point. Like, it's almost like, okay, Saturn is trying to wake us up from some illusions that might have been accumulating there over the last half a year, because I feel Saturn over the last half a year was in these last degrees of Pisces, and this lunar eclipse falling in a decan that is ruled by the Nine of Cups and by Jupiter, there is this energy of like, okay, well, I really thought that this was going to be one thing. I really thought I was satisfied and happy here with this one thing. But the truth is I needed a little bit more, work here. I needed to restructure something a little bit further here. I needed to refine something a little bit further here. And now I'm starting to really understand what the ending is in this part of my life and what actually needs to be birthed now, what actually needs to be moving forward now. Now, what does this mean for us? The illusion of abundance. Okay. So again, like I just said, there's an illusion of abundance that we might have been feeling in this part of our life. And the reality is like, okay, well, maybe what I thought I had or what I thought I was building is not necessarily what I was building, or not necessarily how I want to build it. Is there something I can course correct? Is there something I can do to shift and pivot and do something a little bit differently there now? Maybe true gratitude is something we can reflect on. Recognizing what really sustains us emotionally. So again, maybe there's been some false senses of emotional security. Maybe we've been in a false kind of realm of something that we thought was abundant in our life, that was very satisfactory. And the shattering of the illusion of this eclipse on top of Saturn's influence can be very profound. So that's kind of like why I feel this eclipse season is going to be really, really crazy for a lot of us. And again, I'm not saying our lives are going to be shattered all over the place, but I think we're going to be breaking free of illusions. I mean, that's kind of like the biggest message I have for this eclipse season, is that the illusions will be shattered in the world. The illusions will be shattered in our lives. Whatever is left, whatever blind spots we have left in the Pisces part of our life and the Virgo part of our life, I feel this is kind of the month and the eclipse season for that. So this is stuff that I really want to drive home for you guys. And this is also the end of false wishes. So again, I think we're all going to be waking up and getting a little bit sober, again, to say it for the 1,000th time. And this sobriety, which again, breaking the Nine of Cups reverse. Think about this. Again, we're kind of breaking free of the false, wishful, abundant thinking that maybe we thought was a real thing. And the reality is it wasn't a real thing. And the sooner Saturn wakes us up, the quicker we can get real with our lives, our situations, make better choices, make better relationships. Like whatever your Saturn and Pisces story is, it wants us to get real, to make things structured, to make things more committed and disciplined there. So the end of false wishes, my friends, the end of false wishes. We need to only deal with concrete reality. So Saturn and Pisces can make the Pisces part of our life even stronger than ever before, if this makes any sense. Now, what's interesting about the second decan of Pisces, okay, and the Nine of Cups, I want to go back in history real quick and just provide you some insight on the last time we had major transits really activate in this second decan. In 2007 to 2008, Uranus was in Pisces during the financial crisis. Uranus was in Pisces too, the second decan of Pisces. Uranus hovered in the 15-degree Pisces range during the housing bubble burst. The Nine of Cups themes of false abundance, the American dream of home ownership for all, became unsustainable. Illusions of endless prosperity collapsed as Saturn in Virgo at the time was opposite Uranus during that transit. So if you really think about that, the Jupiterian wish in that Pisces was like, oh my God, like we should have the American dream this, the housing this. Like remember 2007, 2008, that was massive, guys. And the Saturnian wrecking ball on the opposite side in Virgo is what initiated all of that collapse, if you will. September 1998, there was a lunar eclipse at 15 degrees Pisces, the same decan, okay? Nearly the exact same degree as our upcoming eclipse. Occurring amidst the Russian financial crisis and global economic instability. Again, the Nine of Cups excess versus the Saturnian limits. A reminder that collective dreams of prosperity can dissolve overnight when built on illusion. And I would argue right now, in American politics, all this Make America Great Again stuff over these years, this illusion that the world is one way and it's not that way. This illusion that we all have to fall in line with one political ideal over another. So again, we very much are in a very diluted world right now, politically and in so many other realms of culture and society. And this lunar eclipse might actually bring a lot of that, for sure. furthermore on that. 1964 to 65, Uranus-Pluto opposition across the Virgo-Pisces axis. This is when, again, Uranus was in Pisces again in that second decan. And we saw cultural revolution, spiritual experimentation, and psychedelic movements, wish fulfillment and utopian ideals from the hippie counterculture. Okay, clashed with real world consequences, the Vietnam War escalation and societal backlash. So again, we had this new world, this dream, this Nine of Cups wish of a new world, and somehow that was being counteracted by the opposite side of that movement. And in 1933 to 1934, there was another eclipse in the second decan of Pisces during the Great Depression. The U.S. was in the depths of collapse from years of false abundance. In the 1920s, the roaring prosperity, right? FDR launched the New Deal, a Saturnian restructuring of Jupiterian Decan dreams. The Nine of Cups imagery was literally inverted, the wish card revealed as empty, forcing society to rebuild what real fulfillment meant. So again, think about that. What is real fulfillment? I think this can be one of the biggest takeaways for this video. What is real fulfillment? What is this eclipse moment? Big endings, big beginnings, right? What is real fulfillment? What illusions need to be broken? What do you need to recommit yourself to so you can be fulfilled? Okay, because there's something illusory here that needs to be broken down. There is an old story that you're telling yourself, or that you've been experiencing, or that you're revisiting maybe, because again, this retrograde energy from Saturn is going back to a place it was before. And this reflection and revisiting is going to ask you deeper questions, very serious questions on fulfillment, on satisfaction. And what do you want? What is going to ultimately be true and real for you now in that part of your life? What commitments can you make with yourself in that part of your life now? Now, as far as astrological magic is concerned, we never make talismans under eclipses. Why do we avoid talismans under eclipses? The traditional view of eclipses were seen as times of disruption, shadow, and instability. The moon is literally being obscured, meaning their light, therefore power is not whole. For talismanic magic, you want the planet or luminary in full strength and dignity, not weakened, hidden, or afflicted. So making a talisman, which is when we channel energy from a lunation cycle, from a transit at a particular time, choosing an election, and then literally making an object with whatever materials we decide to use, and we do a ritual and invoke the spirit of the Decan or whatever the ritual, whatever the transit is. But when it comes to, and by doing so, I mean, talismanic magic is actually pretty in depth, but again, it's the objects. You know what a talisman is, my friends. And we do that so we can infuse that energy into the object and then carry it around with us as an element of protection or an element of whatever the case may be. But when it comes to eclipses, we are strictly dealing with other types of ritual alignments and cleansing and divestments. We are not trying to harness the power and the energies of an eclipse, which can be disruptive and unstable. Okay, because of the obscurity of the moon itself, or during a solar eclipse, the same thing, right? The sun gets obscured for a moment and becomes darkness, and we don't do talismans for these moments in time, for these moments. But what we do is we can do rituals around releasing. We can do alignment rituals. We can do invocations involving maybe the tarot card in this situation. Because for me, I believe using tarot cards as a meditative device, as a ritualistic tool, is just as powerful as anything else we can do when we do Decan work here. So I would say that we should do everything in our power, if you would like to partake in any sort of astrological magic, to speak intentions of release, to speak intentions to release illusions, addictions, false hopes, or attachments that no longer serve you. Okay, addictions. That's also a word I did not mention today. Addictions to any way of being, not just drugs and alcohol, but like are we addicted to anything going on in Pisces right now that we need to like wake up and smell the roses and get sober on? So we can do a water ritual, however you would like to do a water ritual to release, anything that you may feel is illusory or anything that you feel you need to get a little bit more real on in your life. The Saturn alignment, we could do, Saturn is here for karmic closure. So encourage journaling. I'm encouraging you to journal, meditate, and reflect on what cycles am I completing. Saturn is completing its cycle in Pisces. So I think meditating, journaling, and reflecting, releasing anything that does not serve you. Asking yourself questions. What cycle am I completing? How can I move on from this? How can I gracefully move with the flow of Pisces out of whatever I've been dealing with here? And again, the Nine of Cups invocation. I think, again, we're not invoking spirits here. We're not trying to, harness eclipse energy into the card itself. We are using the card as a question and a reflection moment. What is true fulfillment for me now? Maybe even carry that card on you for the day of this eclipse. Like, that's something I would recommend as well. Carry the card with you. Don't be afraid to take out the card out of your deck and to put it on, on your person, in your pockets, in a purse, whatever you feel like doing. And I think that can be also a powerful reflection, to constantly be looking at that card and asking yourself, well, where am I in a state of an illusion here? Is there any satisfactory here that is false? Am I looking at anything that is not true? Because I need to wake up to the reality of what is true now and what I can do to really start a new beginning and a new life in this part of my life, that Pisces part of your life. So by doing that, it honors the Decan's power without attempting to trap or bind eclipse energy, because that's really important to note when it comes to actual objects, such as a tarot card even. But because you're not physically making the object, the tarot card can be a great replacement for having something physical. And it honors the Decan's power during this eclipse moment. So anyway, my friends, I think that's all I have for you guys. I do hope that this video was helpful and insightful. Please let me know what you think. And as always, I'm honored to be here for you on this sacred journey, providing information and insight for you. And I will see you in the next video.